Hope you like this. If you do, give it a thumbs up and leave any comments below. And remember to subscribe to the channel to be kept up to date on all my hypnotic bedtime stories. So I hope you enjoy the story.
So as you listen to this bedtime story and begin to drift comfortably asleep, you can allow your eyes to close. And with your eyes closed, I don't know whether you'll drift deeper asleep with the sound of my voice, or whether it'll be with the words that I use, or perhaps even the spaces between my words. And so while you drift asleep, you can hear me tell this story about a prince who was sitting in a garden in a palace, meditating. He was sitting under his favourite tree. It's the tree that his father used to sit and meditate under, and his father before him, and his father before him, all the way back many generations. And sitting under this tree meditating, he'd always been told that you know when you're approaching the point where you've grown enough to be responsible and capable of being a king, because you'll have a unique kind of meditation, one where you visit a place you've never visited before. And he'd never understood what that means. All he knew was he had to sit under this tree every day, for a certain amount of time every day, and just meditate and see what happens. And so while he sat under this tree meditating, he did his usual approach to meditation. He closed his eyes. He sat back, leaning against the tree so that he could feel nature, so that he could feel the tree against his back. He took deep, purposeful breaths and made sure each out-breath was longer than each in-breath, helping him to drift into a comfortable relaxation. He allowed his awareness to focus on his breathing while he breathed in and out. He allowed his awareness to be on his body, passing through his body, having a sense of what the different parts of his body felt like. And once he'd been aware of a part of his body, he'd let that awareness go and move on, and be aware of another part of his body and let that awareness go and move on, until all he was aware of was that he was there, almost like just being there as a mind and not as a body. And every day for years and years he'd come here, sat under this tree and meditated. He could feel the warmth of the sun on his skin. He could hear the leaves rustling in the tree as the wind blew a breeze. He could hear birds in the distance and other sounds, like people milling around in the castle grounds, within the palace, His awareness became heightened while he meditated, and gradually his awareness moved out from within him. And not only could he hear footsteps of people, but he could also feel those footsteps of those people, as if somehow hearing the footsteps allowed him to know what those people felt like, what they were doing. His awareness spread out further to touch villagers down in the nearby village. He was able to hear horse and cart, hear the sound of carts on cobbles, the clipping, clopping of the horses' hooves, the sounds of the horses breathing. His heightened awareness increased. And every day he was able to meditate a bit longer than the day before, and his practice continued to pay off. And the more he meditated, the better he got at it. And the better he got, the more he noticed his awareness spread out wider and wider. And his awareness spread beyond the village to the nearby forest, where he was able to be aware of birds in the trees, animals in the forest. And his awareness continued to spread. And he was curious about this awareness. He'd often wondered whether it's an awareness like just getting more sensitive, hearing and feelings, or a connection, that he was spreading a connection out rather than an awareness out, and that in reality he was actually connecting with more. And after some hours of meditating under this tree, for the first time ever, he became aware of something he'd never been aware of before. He became aware of his awareness. Somehow his awareness had spread out so far, it had circled the globe. And the awareness spreading out in all directions across the globe met up with itself, and he was aware of his awareness. And the moment he became aware of his awareness, suddenly there was a bright flash of light, followed by darkness. And he found himself stood in a field of red leafy grass. He found himself in this field at night time. He could see clouds in the sky, but the patterns of the stars didn't look right. And the fact that there were two moons in the sky was a bit odd. He didn't know where he was or how he got here, or what had just happened. He didn't know whether this was maybe a dream. Maybe he'd meditated so much he just fell asleep. It had never happened before. But there's always a first time. All he knew was everything felt so real to him, So he walked through the field, running his hands through the grass, and he could feel that cool red grass. It felt much like ordinary green grass, the same kind of textures, the same movement as you run your fingers through it. And he walked through the field, and he could see lights in a building. So he started walking towards that building. And the building looked very much like buildings he was familiar with. And he arrived at the building. He saw the lights were on and that people seemed to be awake inside. So he knocked on the door, and the heavy wooden door was opened from the inside, and the door was opened inwardly, and he was greeted by someone who seemed incredibly excited to see him and asked him to come in. So the prince walked into the building. He was shown to a seat. He sat in a seat in a living area. Everything seemed very familiar. It was the same kind of house as you'd find anywhere. Not the sort of house he regularly frequented, but he had seen plenty of houses like this. But at the same time, this seemed like a strange place. And the person said that we've been expecting you. And he wondered why he was expected. He didn't know he was going to be going anywhere or doing anything. And they said they've expected him for years. That they wait patiently and excitedly greet when the prince appears. And sometimes, they said, it'll be princesses that appear. You never know who's going to appear. And he wondered to himself, what makes someone appear? Where am I? What's happened? And they explained to him that there's a meditative ritual when you become aware of your own awareness. You've connected with everything on your own planet. You take on the energy, the focus of the entire planet, the psychic energy of everything on that planet. And it connects you with almost like a magical vortex that opens up and sends you psychically to this new place where you appear physically on this planet that's light years from Earth. And somehow there's a quantum connection between the two places that can only be triggered by this psychic connection, which can only occur by doing that meditation and connecting with everything on your own planet. and it's not something you have a choice in. That as soon as that connection is made, as soon as everything on your planet is connected, and the psychic frequency synchronizes with everything on the planet, it synchronizes with this one location in space. And they explain that sometimes it'll be princes who've been in training, practicing meditating, who do this. Other times it'll be the princesses, depending on the generation. But they all seem to be from one family, generation after generation, as if no other family seems to do this psychic meditation. And the prince was intrigued by this and thought this must be that magical thing, that epiphany, that enlightened, heightened awareness that he was expected to achieve if he were to be ready to be a king. Perhaps he needed to connect with all life, with all things, to have a deep understanding and learn something here. And they explained that this is just an extension of his land, of his kingdom. That all these fields, the castle behind the house they're in, all of it is just an extension of what they have on Earth. That when the first person connected and appeared on this planet, the planet was quite barren. There was not a lot here. And because this meditation leads to a connection, sending the consciousness to this planet in a physical form, it was felt that something needs to be built here. And the prince had so many questions to ask, like how did they get here? How many other people are here? Where is here in relation to Earth? Why is this happening? But the prince felt that answers would come in good time. That he should learn what he's supposed to learn for now. And the prince was shown the way to go to the castle. No one had been to the castle for quite some time, so he had to hack his way through lots of vines and brambles. He had to clear a safe path to the castle. No one here had cleared the path because only the prince or the princess is privileged to make that journey. It's something that they all find special. Saving that journey for that person so that they can work hard at the end of their journey. They allow it to become overgrown so that the prince or the princess has to hack through, create the path so that they can feel a sense of creating their own path for their own time. And so the prince hacked his way through to that castle. He found the gates to the castle entrance, and the gates opened as he approached. He found a whole community living within the castle, and they welcomed him excitedly. And he worked his way through the grounds. He saw the different plants around, alien plants, but everything looked familiar. Everything had a familiar feel to it, even though it was all alien. He was greeted by someone who just introduced themselves as the Wise One, who said that they were timeless. And that Wise One took him to a vast library, sat down in the library with him and started explaining to him about that meditation, explaining to him about the path he had taken, about his ancestors, about the enlightenment. And what's expected of him from here. That everyone here happily gets on with life as a community. Look forward to the royal visits when they occur. And that this meditation teaches something about the preciousness of life, the connection with all things. Explained that in this meditative state that he's still back in that garden. He can think people who want to come here into existence here. And they just disappear in one location and then appear here. And he can think people who are here, who want to go home, and they'll appear back at home. And this Wise One explained that most people who are here have been here for generations, enjoy their life here, feel special that they're on a different planet, making something of their lives, exploring, doing something others don't get the opportunity to do. And the prince realized his responsibility, the gravity of his responsibility for the lives of all these people as well as those on earth. He learned that these people are the ones who created the castle, who created the grounds, who do the farming, these people are the ones who wanted to have somewhere the new princes or princesses who meditate successfully would have to go when they meditate, rather than a barren planet. They're the ones who wanted to have a few trials here, like cutting through to the castle, so that only those who were willing to work for what they've achieved would make it. Those who want to just be given things on a plate wouldn't succeed, and would be unlikely anyway to succeed in the meditation, because you have to work for years at the meditation. And the prince realised this experience was teaching him so much about himself, so much about why it's important to be the way you are to others. And the prince learned that he can come back here and visit any time he wants, and that his ancestors still do. That as this is about a connection of spirit, it transcends the you back under that tree, he was told. The prince was shown to a room and told that he'll benefit from seeing the morning, seeing the sunrise here. And he went to bed, found it surprisingly easy to fall asleep. And then in the morning he woke up and noticed the sun was a bit dimmer than he was used to, and had a slightly different tinge to its light. And he realised that's why the plants here are more red than green in their leaves. That maybe that just works better at converting the sunlight into energy to help them grow. And he gazed out and he saw what had been achieved. He saw how happy everyone was. That these people essentially set off because they wanted to be explorers, the first to set foot on an alien world, to prove that they could do it, that they could have a community they could set up, and that they can make that community work. He was in awe of what they'd done, of their attitude, of their kindness and acceptance. One thing he didn't know, though, was how do you get back home? And he was told all you have to do to get home is decide to stop meditating. He was told that from the second your awareness reaches your own awareness, time where you are stands still. He was told that he can spend as much time here as he wants, and time where he physically is doesn't change at all. that as soon as he decides to stop meditating, he'll open his eyes and the meditation will be over. He'll no longer be here on this planet. And no time will have passed from the point where his awareness reached his awareness and him opening his eyes. It would be like there was the bright flash, the darkness, then the eyes opening, all simultaneously. So he said that he'll definitely be back. Decided to stop meditating. Discovered his eyes opening, aware of everything that had just happened, everything he'd been through and experienced, aware that he just had spent an evening, a night, and half a day on an alien world. And yet no extra time had passed here. He went and told the king and queen about this. He told his parents. And they told him, "You're ready now for when you rule the land. You're ready to be a king." And it was some time before he ever was a king, but he knew now he was ready and was able to go and visit that land whenever he wanted to. But for now, he just went up to bed, relaxed down and drifted comfortably into a deep sleep.